All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back from lunch. Hopefully you got a nice break, got some good food, got some energy renewed, and we're going to jump right back into our afternoon sessions. And we're going to start with something a little bit different. We've got a workshop coming to us, special workshop here from Sentry. It's going to take the next half hour or so. This is Sergio, and on stage next to me is a solutions engineer at Sentry, and he's going to give us a quick workshop on diagnosing errors and monitoring performance in Vue. Let's put our hands together for Sergio.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the welcome. Thank you for being here. As John mentioned, my name is Sergio. I work at Sentry as a solutions engineer. And today I have the pleasure of going through this workshop. It's the longest title you're ever going to see here for a talk, so hopefully you remember this talk. It's Diagnosing Errors and Monitoring Performance in Vue using Sentry. So before I get started, just a quick show of hands. How many people here have used Sentry in the past or are currently using Sentry to monitor their applications? Just a quick show of hands, okay. So I see a lot of hands up. That is great. It's definitely good to see the adoption of Sentry. For those who don't have their hands raised right now, you're the perfect spot, because today we're gonna take a deeper dive into Sentry, into Vue, how we interplay together, and how we can streamline the debugging process with the context, with the data that Sentry is able to provide. Before we get into it, I do have an agenda slide. It's really simple, just 2 items, the intro and the demo/workshop. But I did want to intro myself, right? So what about Sergio? What makes him a good fit to talk about Sentry and Vue? So as I mentioned, right now I work as a solutions engineer at Sentry. I've been working at Sentry for 2.5 years almost. I really enjoy my day-to-day. I get to talk to a lot of customers. I get to learn about all the different creative ways that customers use Sentry to monitor their performance, custom measurements. So I really enjoy that work. But before I joined Sentry, I used to actually work at a Canadian startup company called Stallion Express. Probably not a lot of people have heard of Stallion Express here, but it's a great company. It's basically a freight transportation company that will help businesses get packages delivered literally anywhere in the world, right? So I used to work here as a developer. Their web application was built with Vue on the front end, Laravel in the back end. And it was great. Working with these technologies, it was a great experience. I loved it until it was time to debug, right? So at the time, they didn't have a tool like Sentry. They used to store all of the logs in CloudWatch, right? So anyone that has gone through a similar experience knows that this is a pain in the ass. I used to sort through thousands upon thousands of logs just to try to find the log that pertained to the customer that found an error or a performance latency in my application. So this was not optimal. At the time, all I could think about was, hey, how do I avoid this type of headaches in the future? Now that I'm in Sentry, I realize that there isn't avoiding these type of headaches, right? The solution here is to have tools like Sentry to streamline this process, to give me the context that I need to be able to solve, to be able to debug, to be able to triage all of those issues much quicker. And so that's a little bit about me and my experience with Vue. Something else about me is that I'm the happiest when I'm surrounded by wagging tails and wet noses. And yes, I'm talking about my dog. And you can see my dog here on the screen. His name is Dobby, like the elf from Harry Potter. And he's my best friend, right? And so the other day, I was talking to Dobby about business ideas, just how you would talk to your best friend about business ideas. And he actually had really good ideas. One idea that stood up was this idea for a website that would help dogs find hydrants around the city, right? Something about Dobby, he loves hydrants, he loves the smell of hydrants, he loves the shape, the colors they come with, right? But he is fed up that he doesn't have enough hydrants to smell, to sniff around the city. So he came up with this idea, and I absolutely loved the idea. I encouraged him to develop the website. I supported him through the development cycle. But one of the things about Dobby is that whenever he was coding, he would read the word fetch in the code, and then he would just run off and fetch a stick, right? So this was not productive at all. He ended up building a really shitty website. But now he knows I work at Sentry, right? We share a lot of time together. He asked me to debug and find what is going on their website. So that's exactly what we're gonna do here today. We're gonna take a look at Dobby's shitty's website, and we're gonna try to find out what is going on. So the workshop for today, the demo for today, we're gonna go through a live example of a Vue application. It has some known latencies, it has some errors, right? And we're gonna debug it live. If you want to follow along, you can go to that link. It's very easy to follow, so if you do have your computer, that's gonna take you to my codesandbox.io instance, where you can basically reproduce things yourself and then apply the fixes that we're gonna do here in just a moment. However, you don't need to. I'm also not gonna go too deep into Sentry configuration because I want to emphasize on how easy it is to figure out the root causes of issues with Sentry. So if you do have more questions about the configuration, I do invite you to stop by the booth. It's literally the first booth that you see once you come in, and we can talk about particular questions that you have about configuration. But I'm gonna click this link. I actually do have it open over here. Great, so this is a Vue application, right? It's using Laravel in the backend, so I do have my backend already here. And I'm quickly gonna go over the instrumentation of Sentry, right? So Sentry works via an SDK for JavaScript-based frameworks. Very easy to install. It's just an NPM package. We can see it over here. And once I install my NPM package, we usually recommend initializing Sentry as soon as possible, right? For my Vue application, I'm choosing to initialize Sentry here in my main.js file, just making sure that this is zoomed in properly. Great, so I initialize it here. I call Sentry that init, and here I'm gonna pass multiple properties. We have the DSN, which is basically the project address of Sentry. So whenever you go into Sentry, you're gonna give a DSN. This is what you pass over here. I'm passing also the release and a couple of properties to enable, disable features like session replay, performance monitoring, etc. Great. Again, I'm not gonna talk too much about the configuration, but let's actually go ahead and build my application. In the background, I also have the Sentry Webpack plugin enabled. And so what this is gonna do is that this is gonna take the bundles that Webpack generates from my source code and upload it to Sentry so that we can deobfuscate stack traces coming from issues. So it's very important to upload source maps when we're talking about a JavaScript project. Great, so this ended up building. I'm gonna start it and hopefully we get a server here running locally. I'm gonna open it externally. 1, 2, 3. If you noticed, the initial page load, it wasn't as smooth as I would have hoped for. This is my first sign that Dobby did not know what he was doing. But at least he got some of the styling done properly, and we can't blame him or can't blame me for doing this style here. We can see what else he has here. He has a sign-up form. He has some information about his idea. Definitely some ChatGPT generated images. Some explore sniff worthy spots, right? So apparently he tried to do, or he tried to implement an aspect of social media here. I should be able to like this comment, or sorry, not the comment, but the hydrant. It doesn't work, right? Second sign that Dobby doesn't know what he's doing. So this is really, really buggy so far. We had a slow initial page load. The liken functionality does not work. I get an error. If I keep scrolling down, it seems like this is a list of different spots, but as you can see, this is more so like an infinite list. It's not optimized. Whenever I scroll down, it's a little bit laggy, right? So definitely not optimized. I could probably just scroll down all the way to the bottom, and we can see we have about 10,000 different spots, right? So this is not great. However, one of the great things that Dobby was able to do as he was building this website, was to ask me, what tool do you recommend? I recommended Sentry, obviously. So he set up some alerts to notify or send notifications based on performance latencies as well as errors or crashes, right? With Sentry, you're gonna be able to route those alerts to different integrations. I chose Slack, right? And I can see here that I'm getting all of those errors into my VueConf alerts channel. So from here, from the alert, I can see different things. I can see the error, of course. I can see the error coming from the back end, the error coming from the front end, right, based on the project. But I also can see my alert, my alert based on poor LCP performance, right? This is a custom alert that I built and basically notifies me every single time my LCP crosses a custom threshold. Well, great, let's start investigating. So I'm gonna click on this error from the front end project. This is gonna take me to Sentry, where we capture all of the context as I mentioned. We make it really easy for developers to be able to figure out what is going on, right? So first of all, Sentry is gonna tell me what the impact of this issue is, how many users it has affected, what the priority of the issue is, right? So if I'm a developer, I know exactly whether I need to work on this, whether I should delegate it to someone else. In this case, the priority is high. It seems to be escalating, so maybe this is something that I need to take a look at right now. As I mentioned, Sentry tries to capture as much context as possible. If I'm a developer trying to figure out what's going on here, the first thing that I want to take a look at is the line of code, right? This is telling me that the error, at least from the front end aspect, is coming from my sign up component. I get the line, I get the context from my line of code, so now I have a little bit of idea. There are issues that are not that easily reproducible, right? And this is where session replay comes in, because it will not only, or Sentry in this page not only tells me the line of code, but it will show me exactly what the user did to get to that error, right? So session replay is gonna be embedded within the issue details page, but I can also just click see full replay. I'm gonna expand this, and you can see as I click play, I'm gonna be able to see all the mouse movements, user interactions that this particular customer or me had with the page. I'm gonna be able to see as they scroll down, as well as any performance, web vitals, all of the errors, of course, that get thrown from that session are gonna be reported within session replay. So this is great, right? But now it seems that Sentry also tells me that there is an exception on the back end, right? And one of the great things about Sentry is that we're gonna be able to connect your front-end error with your back-end error, right? So you don't have to switch context. You have everything within one place to be able to figure out what's going on. So I'm gonna be able to click on that. This takes me to now my Laravel project. This is basically, a similar issue details view, but now for my Laravel context. If I scroll down, I can also see the line of code from my API.php that basically raised the condition here, raised the exception. I'm gonna be able to see some of the context from the lines. I also have the session replay, right? We already looked at that, but I did want to show all of the different contexts that we have here. For example, for outbound HTTP requests and errors that come from that, we're going to parse the body payload, and we're going to show that here in the issue details view. We also have additional context here, which is fully customizable, but it's not relevant to our exercise here. Sentry also connects to your source code management tool, and we're able to pull metadata from your commits, right? So in this case, it seems that I have no one else to blame but me, right? I committed this change 2 days ago, and it seems that it completely broke our API. If I wanted to get a little bit more context, and now switching gears into performance, right? If you remember, that initial page load was pretty poor. We also had that infinite scrolling that is not optimal, and we need to find a way to fix, right? But how do I get the context? I can also use Sentry to get the performance context by going into view full trace. This is basically gonna take me to the trace view details page where I can see all of the requests coming from my front end all the way to my backend service. If I expand this, I'm gonna be able to see all of the different operations or spans, right? That's how we call it in Sentry, that pertain to this particular page load. So I'm gonna be able to see requests made to the browser to fetch CSS files, JavaScript files, images. All of that we're gonna be able to see within Sentry. For Vue specifically, we also report the life cycle of your Vue components, right? So in the case that performance latency is coming from an unoptimized Vue component, we're gonna be able to see it here. And this is exactly what seems to be happening here, right? Seeing that the last component that was called before this huge block, it was my sign-up component, and then it seems that I have a lot of iterations on my spot wrapper. Again, thinking about that infinite list, I have some suspicions where this is, coming from. So great, I get some context here. I now know that I need to take a look at the sign-up component because this is probably where the root cause of my issue is. So I'm gonna go there, and we're gonna go to components, sign up. I'm gonna close this, and I'm gonna look for my spot wrapper, see if we can find it, and it's over here. And let's take a look at what this is doing. It seems that I am looping through the popular spots list, and then I'm rendering the spot wrapper for every single index, right? So my assumption here is that the popular spots probably has thousands of records, and this is causing my spot wrapper to be called repeatedly, and it's causing some type of iteration problem. Great. Now, because of the magic of preparation and editing a little bit, I know that the solution for this is to implement pagination, right? So I already have a pagination component over here, which is gonna do exactly what we want. I'm just gonna go into here and call that pagination component. Sorry, I'm gonna import it before. Define it here. And now I'm gonna call it. It also accepts a couple of props. So let's take a look at what those props are. It seems that it's total items, page size, current page, and then it has a method that it emits as part of the actions. So we're gonna populate that. Total items is gonna be equal to popular spots dot length current page is gonna be equal to current page. What was the other one? Page size and the method. So page size and then update page, which is going to be equal to update page. Great, perfect. So now I have that. Let's see, we're also going to change this property to be current page pods, which is it's a property or a variable that I'm defining. It's a computed variable. So I'm going to say that, and now we are going to build again. It's building for production again. It's taking all of the source maps. It's uploading those source maps to Sentry. So we're just going to wait a little bit. Perfect. Now we're going to start. We're going to stop this, and we're going to start again. All right. Let's go here. And I don't know if you noticed, but that initial page load was much quicker than what we had previously. I'm going to do that again and again, right? This is much quicker, even if I do a hard refresh. My images, all of my content gets loaded pretty quickly. If I scroll down now to the infinite list, I can see that it has been replaced by a list of about 10 items with a pagination there at the end. So I'm going to be able to go and click next. And it seems that didn't work, but I don't think that is relevant for what we're doing here. It seems that, again, we were able to remove the infinite list. If we now go back to my spots and I click like, it seems that the pagination unfortunately did not solve the error that I was experiencing there, right? So we're still going to take a look at that, but let me maybe see whether the pagination example did actually fix my LCP, right? So let's go here. It seems that I no longer get the LCP alert. It seems that this one was the one that we got before and it got resolved, right? But no other alerts. I do get error alerts, of course, but if I were to go here now to my dashboard, and a shortcut that I do want to show you here is by going to the front-end insights module that you see there on the left panel. This is basically where Sentry is going to group all of the data related to performance in my application, right? So in here, I'm going to be able to see all of the pages, transactions that are reported right now from my Snout front-end view project. So I'm going to be able to click on it, look at more information, but I'm really interested in the web vitals because, again, that was the source of my alert. So I'm going to click on that. This is going to take me here to this page where I can see the performance score. In this case, I can see the performance score is 57. The closer the performance score to 100 is, the better. In this case, we're taking the web vitals from Google, right? So this is the standard for the industry. We have LCP, FCP, INP, CLS, and TTFB. What we're doing here is that we are reporting those web vitals, we're aggregating them, and then basically we're marking them as either a good threshold or a good base or a bad base, right? In this case, I'm interested in my sign-up page, so I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to filter based on the release that I've set here, which is this one. So I'm going to take that from my environment file, and I'm going to paste it here. Now, I do have a couple of events already being loaded from there, but I can see that, based on my experience, it has, I see some difference in LCP based on the different events that have been reported, right? So this is a great sign. This tells me that something is working. If I were to click into maybe one of the events that have a good LCP and I were to compare it to maybe one of the events that have a poor LCP, right? So this is the one that has poor LCP. I can see that, again, the issue that we were looking at in, when the sign-up component was just being mounted repeatedly is present here. If I go to one that does have a good LCP, I can see that now my Vue component has only been mounted 10 times. And now I need to maybe focus on optimizing my iframe. But as we can see, the performance of my website is much, much quicker now. So that's how we can use Sentry to optimize performance. We can validate the changes. We can get alerted on latencies based on custom thresholds, right? If you remember, we also had an error. So let's go back to my error here, right? From my alert, I go to my front end. And now I also want to fix that. I want to improve this for Dobby, right? So if I go here, I can see that, again, this is coming from my API.php file. I know exactly that it's complaining about the body or the key name that is passed as part of the payload, right? So I also know, based on the context that I have here, that the key name that is being passed is comment, right? But my backend is complaining about it, so it must be wrong, right? So let's go back into my backend here, and let's try to see if we can figure out what is going on. So I'm gonna go into my API. I'm gonna close all of this. And if I look at my hydrants endpoint, I can see that I have my object, which is basically just storing different data based on the name, based on the comments as well. But I can see that the comments here does have an extra or an additional S, right? It's not comment, it's comments. So now let's go back to my signup component. Let's see if we can figure out where that method is being called. So it seems like this is the method that is calling that API. We can see the backend URL over here, right? And we can see that the key name that is being passed here is comment. Now, this is not a good practice at all. I do not recommend setting up your backend request like this, but for the purpose of Dobby not knowing how to develop applications, we can fix it for him, right? So I know now that this should be comments with an S. So let's try to see whether that fixed the error that we were looking at. I'm gonna go back here. I'm going to build my application. Hopefully I didn't break anything else. Great, and I'm going to start. I'm going to stop this one, start it again. Now I can see, again, the page load is way, way quicker. And if I go here and I click like, I can see the comments from the other dogs on this particular hydrant, right? So now Dobby can deploy this, Dobby can share this with their friends because it's fully working, it's fully optimized. He's probably gonna keep being a customer of Sentry using the alerts to optimize his website. But yeah, this was an exercise of how to use Sentry to optimize performance, diagnose errors, fix that, and validate that the changes are actually working. Great. So that is the end of the workshop. Again, if you do have any questions, I believe I have about a minute or 2 minutes to answer questions. If you do have questions about the configuration, we can always have a talk by the booth. But yeah, just wondering whether anyone has any maybe quick questions that we can take here. Yeah.
I'm curious, how are you accomplishing the error replay and what kind of performance impacts does it have?
Yeah, the on-error replay. So let me actually show you. Whenever we're setting up session replay for Sentry, we have different configuration values that you can implement. So if we go to session replay, this is how you set it up basically. You have two sample rates. We have replays, session sample rate, and replays on error sample rate, right? So in this case, if I only wanted to capture replays that contain an error, I would define a replays on error sample rate, right? That is the sample rate that tells Sentry, hey, if my session contains an error, I want you to send a replay, right? We capture the error based on how we, naturally hook into the error event listener. And if there's a replay attached to that same session, we're basically going to link the error event and the replay event together based on a trace ID. The second part of the question, what is the performance impact of session replay? The performance impact is imperceptible to the front-end user. It does depend on how complex your application is, right? So for browser session replay, what we do is that we try to reconstruct the user journey based on any DOM interactions, right? So it's not actually a literal video that we take from your website, but it's more so reconstructing based on the DOM interactions. If you do have a web application that has a lot of DOM manipulation, it's constantly refreshing the DOM, well, the impact is going to be a little bit more noticeable. But for 95% of the websites that you have out there, performance impact is not going to be a problem.
All right, thank you. Let's give it up for Sergio.